there, everybody. Good morning. We come on the air with breaking news. President Biden, in his final hours, his final morning in office, has issued several high-profile pardons.
Among those pardoned this morning, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and the members and staff who served on the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol, including Liz Cheney.
And police officers who have spoken out as well.
Breaking news indeed. In one of his final official acts as President of the United States, Joe Biden has indeed issued sweeping preemptive pardons to various members of the House January 6th Select Committee, as well as those who have been identified by name at times by Donald Trump and his MAGA supporters for political retribution. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this puts an end to weeks, if not months, of speculation about what President Biden would do to protect those who have been targeted by Donald Trump, Kash Patel, and prominent MAGA Republicans for political retribution because they either investigated Trump as part of the January 6th Select Committee, or they were seen as too critical and insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump, like former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, who was appointed by Trump. Some people wanted these pardons. Some people are grateful for these pardons. Others are not happy, or at least were not happy about the notion of being pardoned because they felt that they did nothing wrong and it would send the wrong signal. So we'll get into all of that, but let's dive back into this particular clip from NBC News where they unpack a bit more, and then I'll see you on the other side.
From the Capitol Police. Let's go right to Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander. This just broke 10 minutes ago. Peter, what do you know?
Savannah, as NBC News first reported, President Biden, even yesterday, I'm told, was very seriously considering using this extraordinary presidential power to preemptively pardon some individuals. And this morning, as we are reporting, it is clear that he has decided to do just that in these final hours in office to guard against any potential revenge by the incoming Trump administration, by the incoming President Trump. President Biden just announcing, as you note, that he is pardoning Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol. That includes Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, Adam Kinzinger, among others, as well as Capitol and D.C. police who testified before that committee. I want to share with you part of what the president writes. He says in part,
we'll actually take a look at what President Biden had to say. We'll read his full statement because he did issue a full public statement on this. But while we were listening to this, it was reported that Donald Trump has reacted to what President Biden has done, even though literally as we speak, President Biden has welcomed Donald Trump into the White House. They were just videotaped together. Trump is back in the White House meeting with President Biden, but he did react to the president's pardon of his various political enemies. So Trump slams Biden's disgraceful pardons. Many are guilty of major crimes. Trump took a moment as a full day of inaugural events kicked off to text a brief comment to NBC News' Kristen Welker. It is disgraceful. Many are guilty of major crimes. Donald J. Trump. Now, again, they have never identified what those crimes were. And all the allegations that have been made, it's just treason, treachery, and never able to point to anything concrete, all the while threatening not just jail, but sometimes life imprisonment, and sometimes in the case of Mark Milley, suggesting that he should be executed for some sort of nebulous treason. So Donald Trump is triggered by this. This is what President Biden had to say. Our nation relies on dedicated, selfless public servants every day. They are the lifeblood of our democracy. Yet alarmingly, public servants have been subjected to ongoing threats and intimidation for faithfully discharging their duties. In certain cases, some have even been threatened with criminal prosecutions, including General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and the members and staff of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. These public servants have served our nation with honor and distinction and do not deserve to be the targets of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions. General Milley served our nation for more than 40 years, serving in multiple command and leadership posts and deploying to some of the most dangerous parts of the world to protect and defend our democracy. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, again, appointed to that position by Donald Trump himself, he guided our armed forces through complex global security threats and strengthened our existing alliances while forging new ones. For more than half a century, Dr. Anthony Fauci served our country. He saved countless lives by managing the government's response to pressing health crises, including HIV/AIDS, as well as the Ebola and Zika viruses. During his tenure as my chief medical advisor, he helped the country tackle a once-in-a-century pandemic. The United States is safer and healthier because of him. On January 6, 2021, American democracy was tested when a mob of insurrectionists attacked the Capitol in an attempt to overturn a fair and free election by force and violence. In light of the significance of that day, Congress established the Bipartisan Select Committee to investigate the January 6 attack on the United States Capitol, to investigate and report upon the facts, circumstances, and causes of the insurrection. And this is important because MAGA Republicans will say it wasn't bipartisan. It was. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney were Republican congresspeople. They voted with Trump an overwhelming amount of the time when Trump was president, 93% of the time, when Liz Cheney and Donald Trump were both in office. Liz Cheney supported Donald Trump legislatively more than Jim Jordan, more than Matt Gaetz, and many other prominent MAGA Republicans. Why weren't there more prominent MAGA Republicans on the committee? Well, that's because then Republican leader Kevin McCarthy refused to seat MAGA Republicans on the committee when Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, refused to let him have Jim Jordan and Jim Banks. She said, hey, listen, these two you can't have. And it turns out because they were potentially implicated in the investigation. But you have hundreds of other Republican congresspeople you can sit on this committee. You just can't have Jim Banks and Jim Jordan. And in response, Kevin McCarthy said, fine, I'm not going to give you any Republican. And that's what caused Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney to basically give Kevin McCarthy the finger and say, no, we'll sit on this committee. We'll investigate this in good faith. So that's on the Republicans. The Select Committee fulfilled that mission with integrity and a commitment to discovering the truth. Rather than accept accountability, those who perpetrated the January 6th attack have taken every opportunity to undermine and intimidate those who participated in the Select Committee in an attempt to rewrite history, erase the stain of January 6th for partisan gain, and seek revenge, including by threatening criminal prosecutions. I believe in the rule of law, and I am optimistic that the strength of our legal institutions will ultimately prevail over politics. But these are exceptional circumstances, and I cannot, in good conscience, do nothing. Baseless and politically motivated investigations wreak havoc on the lives, safety, and financial security of targeted individuals and their families. Even when individuals have done nothing wrong, and in fact have done the right thing, and will ultimately be exonerated, the mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage reputations and finances. That is why I'm exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the Select Committee, and the U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee. The issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. Our nation owes these public servants a debt of gratitude for their tireless commitments to our country. Now, we're going to get into some of the responses, the specific responses from people who receive these pardons. And my understanding is you have to accept them. You must accept them before they take their full effect. You can refuse, my understanding, a presidential pardon. You can say, no, thank you, Mr. President, I don't want it. In which case, the full immunization, the full protections of the pardon don't apply to you because the president issues it, you must accept it. If you don't accept it, the pardon doesn't apply. Sounds like some of the people have already accepted. So here's a statement from Dr. Anthony Fauci, courtesy of CNN.
I talked briefly to Anthony Fauci, who got one of the pardons, who said he is very appreciative of what President Biden did. He said, and again, he has done nothing wrong, but there are baseless accusations against him in his view, and he has been very worried about what it will mean for him and even more so for his family.
Yeah, Dr. Fauci has been talking about this in interviews for years, that because of increased threats against him, he's had to hire security for his family. He's been very emotional about this and totally understandable. He's gotten emotional before Congress, very upset because he sees it as he's an apolitical actor who's just following the science under Trump and Biden. And as a consequence, his family's being threatened. It is pretty gross, but that just goes to show how depraved MAGA can be. General Mark Milley, again, not just a combat veteran, a military veteran, but a man who was appointed to this position by Donald Trump himself. This is what he had to say. After 43 years of faithful service in uniform to our nation, protecting and defending the Constitution, I do not wish to spend whatever remaining time the Lord grants me fighting those who unjustly might seek my retribution for perceived slights. I do not want to put my family, my friends, and those with whom I served through the resulting distraction, expense, and anxiety. So, yeah, with whom I served through the resulting distraction, expense, and anxiety. He thanked President Biden for the pardon as well. Another one is Harry Dunn, former Capitol Police officer. He says, I'm eternally grateful to President Joe Biden, not just for this preemptive pardon, but for his leadership and service to this nation. especially over the last 4 years. I wish this pardon weren't necessary, but unfortunately, the political climate we are now in has made the need for one somewhat of a reality. I, like all other public servants, was just doing my job and upholding my oath. I will always honor that. Now, again, this is good news, but actually one I want to point out, and I am curious why the president didn't make it just a bit broader in terms of the people to whom this applied. There's a guy by the name of Alexander Vindman, who has been a decorated civil servant under Republican and Democratic administrations, including the Trump administration, and he has been targeted by MAGA repeatedly. He was a key witness in the first Trump impeachment effort when Donald Trump attempted to extort Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, by withholding congressionally approved aid unless Zelensky agreed to dig up politically damaging material on then presidential candidate Joe Biden. Vindman testified against Trump, took a lot of flack for it, but he was not covered in this pardon. And Rachel Vindman, his wife, is understandably very upset by this. Whatever happens to my family, know this. No pardons were offered or discussed. I cannot begin to describe the level of betrayal and hurt I feel. And Libs of TikTok, this right-wing deranged account, that likes to dox people and attack people, she's like, ooh, Republicans should look into this. Why is Rachel Vindman so concerned that her husband wasn't pardoned? So, yeah, I wish the president had also included people who have been targeted by MAGA from the first impeachment hearing. Because remember, Donald Trump was impeached twice, and I understand the January 6th impeachment is much more visceral and certainly much more impactful, but Donald Trump earned his impeachment the first time around as well by extorting an ally. And a lot of people put themselves at enormous, not just reputational risk, but physical risk by testifying against Donald Trump, and they've been left out in the cold. So I really hope the president issues a second pardon before he leaves office in about an hour and a half. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.